So I picked up the kids from school today, and as I picked up my son, he goes to me, "Guess what? We almost learnt about Greta Thunberg. Why do you hate her?" And I go, "What? What happened?" He goes, "Yeah, why don't you like Greta Thunberg?" And I'm going, "Oh, well, son, it's not like I don't hate her. I just think that she doesn't know what she's talking about." And then I thought, how am I going to explain this? How am I going to explain this concept of climate change, global warming, all of that stuff to a 80-year-old where he understands? And then I said, okay, let me step back a second. I don't want him to sort of get my view of the picture. I want him to start thinking on his own. I want him to start getting the pieces together and doing some analysis himself. So this is what this video is about: critical thinking. Hi, my name is Opie. I talk about health, wealth, and happiness. As I said, this video is about critical thinking, and sadly, not many of us do it. And I think over the last few years or so, I have become very good at it. Not because I'm smart or anything, it's just because I guess I do this more or less for a day job. As a business analyst, this is what I do. I gather bits of information from here, bits of information from there, put it all into I package it up into a document or some sort of format where it's easily digestible by other people. That's what I do. And I don't know it's because of that, but I've gotten a few things right over the last few years. And I thought, okay, let me try and impart my way of thinking to you guys, and ideally my kids as well, so they know how to apply these thinking. It's just a thinking, all right? It's not one particular topic or another. So I want to try and give you two examples. One is the COVID example, or the pandemic, and second one is, I guess, global warming, climate change, all that stuff. I'll likely touch on that because that's a heavy topic on its own, and it probably requires a separate video, which this one's going to be too long if I go down that path. So let me touch on that, but I'll primarily focus on the most recent example of a disaster that us humans had to go through. So let me go through the thinking patterns here. So again, what you have to do is, when you start being given this heavy topic, or if you're being asked to analyze something like this, you have to be like a detective. You have to try and get pieces from here, get pieces from there, and try and put the puzzle together. But the idea is, you're getting from a political spectrum, you have to try and get pieces from both sides, not just one side of the narrative. Because often, if we're with certain amount of friends or groups, we seem to get stuck in an echo chamber of they believe the same thing that we believe, therefore we don't hear any counter arguments. Does that make sense? So if you say, I like ice cream, and everyone in your group likes ice cream, if there's no one to debate that ice cream isn't good for you, you're gonna get the same repeating feedback. Makes sense so far? This is why it's good to get bits and pieces from everywhere, and then you be the interpreter of that information. Be like a detective. Second thing is, you have to check if the media is pushing the same narrative. Often they'll parrot certain phrases. And when things like this happen, you'll notice patterns. I mean, during the pandemic, it was unavoidable that they were using the same phrases, same lines. For example, safe and effective, 14 days to flatten the curve. All of these phrases, they were using it over and over and over and over again, to the point that people were going, "Oh, I believe this stuff." And that becomes the norm. So watch out for these patterns where they're repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Third thing, the government is basically not your friend. Okay, I haven't come across any government that does the best interest to their people. So always be skeptical, and just know that big corporations and the media is just simply an extension of the government. So be skeptical from day one. If they're trying to push an agenda, that should be a red flag, right? And this is all about identifying red flag, then going, hey, these guys are telling me to do something. Why are they telling me to do it? Question that. Most people don't. Most people are like sheep and just follow whatever thing is given their way. Okay. I've got a little bit of a list, so trying to go through it as much as I can. Do these bureaucrats apply the same level of scrutiny and level of rules that they tell you to do to themselves? So you might have noticed in the pandemic, they were telling you to stay home and not go out anywhere. Meanwhile, many, including our own Premier, Dan Andrews in Victoria, Californian Governor Gavin Newsom, I mean, those are the two that come to my mind, they were caught partying in large crowds, no masks on, nothing. You know, it's one rule for, what is it? Rule for thee, not for me. That philosophy. So see if that's going on. There was other photos of all these bureaucrats lining up, right? Lining up for a photo shoot, all had their mask on. As soon as the photo shoot was done, they all end up taking masks off and having a chat. And I'm telling you what's happened. You can actually go out and check yourself. So just be mindful of that. If there are this type of behavior happening, and that should be a red flag. So we found out very earlier on that this was a respiratory disease, as in, it's airborne kind of things. And you can inhale it and you'll end up getting sick. So at that point in time, that should have been a sort of a red flag going, there's very little that you as an individual can do to not get this virus. Because in terms of the early deaths that were happening, who was dying? Tell me, very earlier on. People who were in their 90s and 80s. So very older people. And when you think about it and apply common sense logic, what does it take for an 80s and 90s-year-old person to die? Pretty much anything, right? If they get a bad cold or flu, they could end up dying. They could have a heart attack. There's a whole bunch of things that could take them out, sadly. We had our politicians going, sadly, an 85-year-old woman passed away today, blah, blah, blah. That's one death. This should have been a red flag. The other thing that happened during that time was the WHO, who classified COVID as dying of COVID as two categories. One is if you died directly as a result of COVID, and secondly, if you died with COVID and from COVID. Okay, so one is you died because you had COVID and you died from that. The other thing is you died from another cause. For example, you got shot, and there were a bunch of memes about this. You got shot, you got brought into hospital, they did a PCR test on you, found out you had the COVID virus in you, and you ended up passing away. They would put on your death certificate as died from COVID. I'm telling you the truth here. You can fact check this yourself. I don't have time to get all these things because working on a timeline here. But this is all true to inflate the numbers. And hospitals were getting subsidized tens of thousands of dollars for each COVID death. So they were also getting incentivized to bump up the numbers. Another red flag. Gathering in, groups of 5 or 10. When we think about it, the restrictions were coming together where the bureaucrats again would come on TV and tell us, hey, you can't have large gatherings. You can only be in groups of 5 or 10 at a time. Meanwhile, they were having dinner parties. When you were allowed to go out, do you remember the people who would have the mask on, put the mask down, have a bite, put the mask back on? Most ridiculous thing ever. In the foyer area, no mask on. As soon as you enter, mask on. This was the most arbitrary set of rules that we encountered, right? It was an absolute joke. Red flag. The definitions changed as well. So at that point in time, there was a number of key words that were being used, such as the word vaccine, got changed. So if you went to the US website, the definition got changed. So if you ever read George Orwell's 1984, when words start changing, the definitions of words start changing, this is a red flag. right? So be mindful of these things. And what I'm doing now is going through systematically what happened during the pandemic and just try and get you to apply some critical thinking into other areas. And God forbid, if this happens again, you can apply similar sort of logic. Now, the big kahuna, the vaccine rollout. Again, the parroting, safe and effective. Normally, we know to get a vaccine up and running takes 7 to 10 years. This one was done at the speed of science, 12 months, I quote, right? One of the Pfizer executives. What was the red flags in here? For those who don't know, they ran some trials before it was rolled out to the masses, and more people died in the vaccine group than the control group. Arguably, I think it was only one, but wouldn't that be a red flag still? Wouldn't that make you want to go, what? More people died in the vaccine group than in the control group? How could that be? Why wasn't people notified? Some of us knew, most people didn't. The booster, when it came out in 2022, do you think it was tested on humans? No, the booster wasn't tested on humans. The booster was tested on 8 mice. Not 9 mice, not 10 mice, 8 mice. And it was deemed safe and effective. Red flag. There was, soon afterwards, there was a guy called Edward Dowd, who was an ex-BlackRock executive. And what he was really good at was knowing early warning signs of stocks, right? So he would follow different types of stocks. And when there was what he deems as a signal, early warning signal that said, hey, that doesn't seem right. So the fundamentals of the company weren't quite right. He would basically mark that as a signal, and he would bet in the opposite direction. And he was really, really good at finding early signals with various stock. He found the same thing with the vaccine. Ended up writing this book. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this? This is called Cause Unknown. Cause Unknown, I mean, hopefully we know what the cause is, but this goes through like hundreds, there's more, hundreds of people who've just died suddenly. They're just completely flatlined and died, while majority of them are playing sport, some sort of sport. So while playing soccer, heaps of people died during playing soccer, and whereas other sports, they just, look at this is Shane Warne, boom, no history of heart issues, completely gone. And there's QR codes for each of these, which you can scan and test it out, check it out. But this is a great record for, that was only 2 years, for 2021 and 2022. What about all the subsequent years? So if we look at the data today, the cancer rates have gone up, the fertility rates have gone up, cardiac arrests have gone up, excess deaths have gone up. In fact, you can see all of these statistics and documented scientific papers, so you know that I'm not speaking rubbish. There's a guy called Dr. John Campbell. If you go to Dr. John Campbell, search any of these keywords on his channel, you will see it. And he goes through the scientific paperwork line by line and explaining in layman's terms, far better than I can, in what is going on. And it's most of these papers that he's presenting are peer-reviewed research. And he's noticed that the excess mortality rate, meaning the reasons why people would die, has actually gone up. From the start of 2021, it has increased above the baseline to anywhere between 15 to 20%. This is so bad that the life insurance company in America accidentally said this in one of their briefings, not making any sort of connection. They said, hey, we've noticed that we've had an increase in people dying of cardiac arrest, about 15 to 20% increase. And this is the kicker though. He said, but the funny thing is, it's not older people dying, it's working age people dying. So if you can imagine working age people dying, say from 25 to 55 or 60, why would they be dying if it's not from COVID? And that's what you have to ask yourself. If I can sort of apply this to my own inner circle, so I've got, say, 10 good friends, and this is a real statistic, real statistic of my small 10 group of friends. 3 of them, 30%, have confided in me that since taking this medical intervention, they've had heart issues to the point that they've actually had to go see a cardiologist and get further tests done. They don't know what's going to happen long term. I hope they'll be okay, but that's what they've told me. The other 7 haven't said anything to me directly, and I'm not going to ask them because it's their business. But just in my own network, if that's the statistics, it's a worrying one, right? So it's a damn shame that we as humans didn't apply any common logic to this. But this is the type of thinking that didn't happen. We were just so okay with following the narrative that happened that year. So when there was a post that I ended up putting online, and I got a reply back from someone, and I'll post it up on the screen. I'll read out what he said. He said, "To be fair, the media narrative totally dissuaded anyone, including myself, from believing the X theory. No one thought to mention that it was a bat virology lab in Wuhan," right? So that was his reply. My reply, I'll read it out to you. I said, "I think this goes back to the fundamentals on how we should all live our lives. Number 1, don't believe the government, period. The mainstream media is simply a propaganda machine, an extension of the government. Number 3, don't rely on anecdotes to make life or death decisions. Number 4, look into the research, the data yourself, including who funded the research. Number 5, listen to both sides of the argument, determine historical credibility of those fighting for one way or another." So we had a handful of people that were fighting for the right path in my mind, but they often were shut by the social media giants and the media giants that then. And this is why most of us are thankful for, whether you like Elon or not, that he actually ended up buying Twitter, and now it's called X, for allowing the freedom of speech platform to voice and debate and have these discussions, because that debate didn't happen. And because of that, other platforms have become a bit more freer in terms of allowing people to express their thoughts and views. Remember, what do they say? Just because you cut off a man's tongue doesn't mean he was wrong. You're basically just proving that maybe there was some truth to what he was saying. So the idea to shut down any ideas that don't work is to debate, have candid conversations, but that didn't happen. I'll continue to go on. Anyway, the last one was to apply some common sense thinking. So that's the whole COVID and pandemic thing. But I'll quickly touch on the how we started this with Greta and stuff, with global warming. So that is an in-depth conversation on its own, but let me quickly go through it. In 1978, there was a small documentary published online. Well, it's online now. It's on YouTube. I'll leave the link to it. Leonard Nimoy, Spock, was the narrator on that, and that entire episode was directed towards how Earth is going to freeze over because we were entering a time of global cooling. This is 1978. In the 1970s, the experts unequivocally said we are entering a period of global cooling. Come the 1980s and 1990s, what did they say? Hey, global warming. We have to do what's right to prevent global warming. Blah, blah, blah. 2000s and beyond, they realized, oh no, not sure what's going on. Not sure if it's cooling or warming. Let's just call it climate change. They ended up calling climate change. So far, we're sticking with that. So as far as I'm concerned, these guys don't know what they're talking about. There's a great book written by a guy called Alex Epstein. He advocates for the use of fossil fuels purely from a statistical point of view, because if you look at the graphs of those who are releasing CO2s, you'll notice at the moment the largest by far contributors are China and India. So the question that he asks is, we in the Western world have gone through an industrial revolution where we've burned out fossil fuels and, carbon and all of that stuff to make our cities, make our roads, make our buildings, and to bring our society into a certain standard. Should we, or do we have the right to now go back to these developing countries and go, hey, you can't develop yourself because you are releasing too much CO2, so you have no right now, you have to stop. What we have to realize is they are slightly behind, several decades behind where the Western world is in terms of a development scale. Therefore, they have to use and burn that fossil fuel to come up to the standard, to bring themselves out of poverty, just like the Western world did. That's the case he makes. And as I said, I'll save the bigger length video for next time. But I hope this gets your mind thinking into how you should be thinking. Hope this helps. Think critically. Don't believe what people tell you, even me. Please don't believe it. Go out there, look at various resources. I mean, X, I have to say, is a pretty good resource now. Even though there's a whole bunch of junk there, you can still filter out and find all these random things and go, oh, I didn't see that side. I didn't see this side. Check out other places as well. Find the sources. Find out who's funding those research papers. What are their narratives? Who's backing them? Ask these questions, and then you can be informed. Then you can come to a informed decision and be a better human being and be prepared next time. I wish you well. I wish you happiness. I'll see you in the next video. All the best.